Alright, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Labyrinth. I, as always, am your host, Nigel, and today you got another episode of Tales from the Labyrinth for you guys, of course. And really quick before we get into it, first things first, of course, System Shock Radio is going to be coming tomorrow at about 1:30 p.m. I'll be live over on Facebook Live, but we're live here for Tales from the Labyrinth for the first time in a while, so hope you guys are excited for that. But also, I got a bunch of stuff coming to my YouTube channel. Also, it's going to be a couple reviews. It's about 3 reviews guaranteed, possibly a 4th one, but possibly not. It depends on what I'm done with. What the thing I want to review, but and of course a bit of a schedule change. So of course I do System Shock Radio and Tales from the Labyrinth on a bi-weekly schedule. So every other week I do those, and what I'm gonna try to do is alternate between the live videos like this and then the pre-recorded videos like we usually do for those. But if you guys are excited about that, let me know, and I hope you guys are. But without further ado, let's get into it. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit different. So I'm not going to read any actual poetry for today, but I just want to take the time because I don't think I really have had the chance to, on here at least. I want to talk about why I love poetry so much and why I enjoy it so much. Now, I believe I have talked about poetry a little bit on System Shock Radio, but the thing about System Shock Radio is I go through a few topics actually, and and so with poetry I don't get a whole lot of time to talk about it. When I did talk about it, I didn't really have a whole lot of time to do so. But because this episode is going to be devoted to poetry, now I can really go into detail as to why I love it so much. So, basically, to put it simply, why I love poetry so much and why I do poetry, which I haven't really done any new poetry in a little while, and I apologize for that. But stuff's been coming up, and sadly I haven't had a whole lot of motivation to do poetry, but I'm going to try to get back into writing actual poetry for you guys, because I know you guys are enjoying when I write and when I read poetry as well. But why I love poetry so much, and it's because I feel like poetry is kind of like a hidden language in a way. What do I mean by that? So, with poetry, a lot of people use poetry to convey complex ideas, as such as like their emotions, how they feel, some of the stuff they're going through, but they're able to do it in a creative way that you normally aren't able to do. Some people, when they convey their emotions, it's very direct. Hey, I feel this way. But I feel like with poetry, when people do poetry, they connect it. They make comparisons. They exhibit how they feel or what they're thinking or what they're going through in very cool, creative ways. For example, I've written a few like love poems, and I equated the love that I felt at the time to different things, such as like I love you. Just an example. I didn't actually write this in my poetry, but I love you to the moon and back. That's a pretty common expression. That's kind of a creative way to show that you love someone, to the moon and back. Like, the moon's pretty far from Earth, but just that creative way of doing things is why I absolutely love poetry. I love reading poetry. I love writing poetry. Absolutely love reading other people's poetry, and that's why I sometimes have posted other people's poetry as well, and why I follow poetry as well on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that, because reading poetry fascinates me, and it fascinates me that these people were creative enough to convey how they feel, convey these emotions, these complex emotions that you can't quite put into like simple basic words, but they find a way to channel them into what they're writing in a creative way, if that makes sense. So, for example, what we saw last week, actually the week before, I should say, with Edgar Allan Poe. Of course, last week was me talking about the Chris Benoit crime analysis. If you haven't checked that out already, go check that out on my YouTube channel. But when I did the Edgar Allan Poe poetry reading, his poem The Raven, what I found was that the emotions which, knowing Edgar Allan Poe, he may or may not have been going through them. I believe he was going through a lot of those like complex emotions where things feel surreal, they feel like a dream. It's hard to separate fact from fiction, but being able to put them in a creative way and to channel them in a creative way, channeling them through the Raven, or putting them through a sort of filter of a dream state. And sorry if you guys hear some background noise, that's likely my sister, but channeling them in that creative way was pretty cool to see for Edgar Allan Poe, and it's one of the reasons why he's regarded as such a interesting poet, to say the least. And there's a lot of other poets. It's one of the, and like I said, it's the reason why I studied poetry, why I was able to get into poetry, seeing this creative outlet, and there's a way to handle emotions creatively. For me, that's pretty cool to see. Other people, even if it's not poetry, they do creative writing, which is, in my opinion, just as cool. And I love creative. I've always been a fan of like creative things, because it's people going outside the box. It's people thinking outside the norm, going against the grain, going against tradition, and exploring things in a way that people haven't quite seen before. And I think that's the core of why I love poetry. It's oftentimes things that people haven't seen before, and I think that's why a lot of people really like poetry. And another reason I love poetry is because there's a range of poems that are out there. There's some happy poems, there's sad poems, there's funny, there's serious, there's daunting, there's very dramatic, there's very moody poems, there's very like feeling down types of poems. There's seemingly a poem for everything. You know how they say there's an app for everything? Well, there is a poem for everything. And I think that's pretty cool as well, that there's so many things that people connect to in poetry, even if it's not poetry they've written. If it's poetry they've read, they can resonate with it and say, hey, that's a pretty good poem, and I feel like that poem personally speaks to me as a person. And that's why I wanted to do Tales from the Labyrinth, do my poetry readings, but also because, you guys said you wanted to see it, but that's why I love reading poetry for you guys. And I honestly do hope you are enjoying the poetry that I've been reading. And I'll admit, my poetry isn't quite as like robust or as like magnificent and as some of the other poems I've read, but I'm still proud of it in its own right. It's still pretty good in its own right, and it's kind of my story, putting out some of my thoughts, even if it's not my thoughts per se, if it's not from my point of view. That's another tool that poets use, is where the poetry that they are putting out there isn't quite from their point of view. It could be the point of view of someone else who's looking, and that's the type of that either first person versus third person, or even a second person point of view. That's a tactic when it comes to writing and to make the narrative flow well. Poets use it as well, and I think that's where it's cool to see, is that even if it's not necessarily their point of view, it still speaks to them, and it could be based off the feelings that they have about something, even if they're not going through it directly. But that's really about it. I just wanted to come on here and gush about poetry for a little bit. So, like I said, hope you guys have been enjoying the poetry readings and everything. And if you are, please, keep liking, keep supporting, share all that good stuff. And of course, like I said, System Shock Radio is going to be live tomorrow on Facebook Live at 1:30. And we got plenty of YouTube videos coming up. Now, my goal is to try to upload a YouTube video at least once a week. And even if it's not like System Shock Radio or Tales from the Labyrinth, I want it to be something like a review or a different type of video I want to try out in the next few days. More on that later, but yeah, so I want to try to get something uploaded, and I want to do a bunch of different things for my YouTube channel so that you guys can enjoy something else from me and try my talents at other things. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and if you have, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.